because I think there's two prongs to this, and feel free to add more prongs if you'd like, but I think there's two things to focus on. Communication between these two bodies, or these two entities, and the force, the men and women of our public safety, system, and then communication between the two groups. I think those are two different things. Are there other bullets in the communication chain besides that, or does everything seem to roll under those two things? I'll either take blank stares as I'm on the right track, or you're over it. I don't know. Okay, everybody nodding their head that I'm on the right track. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Communication with the team. I think one of the things that we talked about in our very first meeting was that there is, and I have heard this from both of our officer representatives, that there are a majority of our workforce that do not know what the Merit Council is, what its purpose is, or how it functions. Is that accurate?
Correct.
So, I guess the question is why? Why do they not know about it? Are we not telling them, or are we telling them and they're not retaining it, or are we not packaging it correctly when we communicate? I mean, what is the disconnect? And anybody jump in?
I can say a little bit about that. A part of that, in my opinion, is personal responsibility. If you work for an agency and that has a merit system policy and procedure manual, you're given access to that upon entrance into the agency, and plus during our basic CODA training, it is discussed in detail what the merit system actually does. All of our employees sign an agreement at the entrance into the sheriff's office that they, one, know where all of our manuals are, which the Merit Council manual is one of those manuals. And they also sign that they are going to read and familiarize themselves with those processes.
Yeah, but I also say except when I download an app on my phone and it says, please read these 74,000 pages of whatever it is I'm about to turn over to the interwebs.
Yes, sir. But, well,
that's my role and responsibility, but does that happen? No. So, I get it.
Yeah, but it is discussed as a part of their coding training. It is the whole manual.
Excuse me, coded,
Corrections Officer Training Academy.
Okay.
It's the first step of they go through an orientation when they come to work for the Knox County Sheriff's Office. 2 weeks of that time is spent on making sure that the individual is orientated to working within the Corrections Division, but also it covers a broad base of things that are applicable to the Sheriff's Office. Merit System Manual is one of those things. The General Orders is one of those things. The Policy and Procedure Manual of the Knox County Sheriff's Office, Detention Facility, County Jail, those are all documents.
How much, I'm sorry to interrupt, how much time is, first off, two questions. Is a representative from the Merit Council physically a part of that?
No, they're not, but they would be welcome to be a part of it, but it's basically that class that we do is an overview, just a broad view of everything that the merit system does. They talk about the grievance process, they talk about,
how much time is spent? Out of the 2 weeks, well, is it an hour or is it 20 minutes or 2 hours?
It's really hard to quantify the exact amount of time. They are in a block of instruction discussing manuals, but it's also repeated through other blocks of instructions where the elements of that may come up when we're discussing employee discipline and how that process works. There'll be a portion of that will talk about the merit system and where they fall into that process. But again, it's at the beginning of their employment with us, and they're drinking water through a fire at that time. And maybe it's something that Lieutenant Gibson's husband may want to introduce as a refresher for those individuals that have been removed from that process for a period of time. But there is an effort made by the agency not only to familiarize themselves with the merit system, but that also, that they know where the manual is themselves. We have a requirement, I know what you're saying, you signed the user agreement, but as an officer with the agency, these manuals guide a lot of our conduct and the things that we can and can't do. You have to be responsible to these, and one of the general orders says ignorance of the general order is no excuse. So
are they given the manual like physically or an electronic version or online or?
They are given a jump drive that has all that material on it, so they can take it with them.
So they're getting a digital version of this?
Yes.
Okay. You said that they're not there physically, but that there would be no reason that a merit council representative couldn't come and have a dedicated amount of time to be able to present, here's who we are. Ms. Taylor can say, welcome, I'm a new face. I just onboarded on a company, and I can tell you the first week is insane, and you barely remember anything. And it's usually one person like driving you through an HR process, or two people. So that is, is that something you would like to have?
We actually used to do that in the past when we had, prior to the intranet, which is the inside that they use, where the manual's posted as well, I believe.
Yes.
It's also available on our website. But prior to that, we used to go to each new hire class and present a physical copy of the manual.
So that's something you'd like to do again?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. That's a plus. Ms. Gibson?
I just want to clarify on what he said that maybe Chief Gibson wants to reintroduce. I just want to make sure what were you talking about?
No, they were talking about individuals that aren't familiar with it, and I said maybe the individuals, when they were in that orientation process, maybe they'd forgotten that material. It might be a good idea to have a block, maybe an in-service, where that maybe Paula might come out and just open up and give them an opportunity. I know that his schedule is very tight, and there's a lot of requirements.
You're talking about something like, hey, in January we're going to have,
Yeah, I just wanted
6
to
blocks,
clarify if you're referring to the academy or not, but then
No.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
In-service.
And I do think that that is something that would be really helpful. If this is a clear communication gap, finding, there are 4 sessions these 2 days at the beginning of January this is all we're going to talk about. Invite the force, invite the representatives, whoever. You want to come learn what we do, here you go. Come on down. And I think if that's something that you could add to your, coordination list and try to get out, we've got to educate our team on who we are. Okay. What are other things about communicating with the team? Is there anything else clearly they know who you are to some extent because they have to go through you all to be hired, right? So what do you do while you're going through that process to communicate with them the who and the what, or are they just deer in the headlights?
No, not really. Now since COVID has happened, we've had a lot more one-on-one interaction because they do have to be tested. Corrections officers, patrol officers applying is a written exam. So they're coming in physically to the office. Instead of a group testing, we're doing one-on-one kind of testing.
Okay.
So as far as the process after being hired, they do come back for a promotional process. So anytime there's a vacancy inside the sheriff's office, there is a job bid, which involves the job description that is written by the sheriff's office, approved by the merit council. They have to bid on that position if they're interested in doing so, and we verify that they are eligible for that and administer an assessment.
So they're always peppered through the process, but you can still be put through HR and not really understand the philosophy of the HR director, so to speak. Okay, or I'm using it as a broad sense. No, Mr. Broyles, did you?
It seems to me that in my own experience as well, in-service is a perfect place to do this. And it may be interspersed with, if there is any changes that you do, you guys do roll calls?
Mm-hmm.
There's a roll call opportunity, 5 minutes, tell you about a change in merit council. But what they need to know, and the reason it's so important is you'll see these folks twice, when I hire you and when I fire you. That's where we're going to interact in a way that you'll never forget. When you hire them when you're no longer with us anymore. So they need to know what merit council is all about. And there's an opportunity to do that. My guess is that in service, we typically do it after lunch, goes a 15 to 20 minute, presentation. This is what we do, and ask any questions, and we move on down the road.
Are there other ways that we can better communicate with the force about what this is? Any tangibles? this is prong one. This is a lot easier than prong two. So that's why I'm trying to wrap this one up to see any more tangible things that we can do to, I mean, let me ask.
No, I mean, I think if it gets addressed in CODA, and then it like was talked about with in-service order patrol, you can grab it roll calls, which, you know, either one of those, because it's not like a class, it's at that point, it's like a refresher, like, hey
Sure.
guys, just to bring it back up, you know, let you know, and then that way, if there is a question, they can ask it right there.
And I do think it's important that you have a representative from the team, whether it be, I think it probably should be maybe one person from the council and one person from the staff that comes and said, that way they're looking at, it's not being told to them by the administration. I think it's really important that you all are the ones doing the training and doing the interaction. I will say too, just from being new to this whole world, communication is, half of it's good marketing and clear communication. I still am terribly confused a lot of times because it's so similar. You have the Knox County Sheriff's Office, then you have the, I just got to get it right, then you have the merit system for the employees of the Knox County Sheriff's Office. The branding, the name, it's confusing to anybody, much less, it's not very clear. It's not like you have, so I don't, this is not a specific, but I would really say that if you could figure out how to almost be clear in the name or clear in the logo or something where you have an identifiable brand and recognizable name that isn't so confusing. I mean, again, maybe it's just a civilian thing. Maybe everybody knows about me, but it's like, it's a mouthful. Right? You're the merit system and then you're the council of the merit system of the such a, you know.
That's the confusing part to the officers. When it
I'm not
Crystal,
confused.
well, I know you're not confused, but that's the problem. Poor Crystal knew exactly what she was talking about, but when something was brought up, she's like, that's not the system, that's the, and then it blew their minds. And then
It's a system versus the council,
yeah,
but it's all done.
exactly.
So
Well, the best way I know how to explain it is you have the merit council. I don't even bother throwing system in there. Take system out of your vocabulary. Merit system council, but it should be, scratch it out. Merit council. Then you've got the board. That's the board of volunteers. They don't get paid. The merit council works for the government, answers to the county commission and to the mayor. They're the ones that you pay. Merit council, not the board. Volunteers.
So the merit council is the merit council, and then you have a board. I mean, what is now called the council is really it's a board of directors or a board of trustees or something like that.
I mean, I just call them the board. Don't put no other word on it. They're the ones that hear the grievances.
They're the oversight. Okay?
Correct.
This is not any different than any other nonprofit. You have the
Correct.
you know, the Clean Water Initiative, and then you have the board of the Clean Water Initiative or whatever. You have the board of directors. So, have you all talked about that?
Well, we have actually, sorry, Crystal.
Oh, goodness.
We refer to the council members as the merit council. They are the council members. So our office.
Which is even more confusing.
Mark out what you just wrote down.
Yeah,
Mark that out.
the staff, our office, we've always referred to as merit system, merit council staff. I mean, however you want to
You're
say
just
it.
confusing me
But
even more.
old employees who have been here a lot longer just refer to all of us as the merit board. I mean, that I've heard that
Oh, wait,
commonly.
what?
Merit board. We're all the merit board.
It is.
Do you feel like it would
We'll
be
do
a
a
huge?
class.
Do you feel like it would be a huge objection to somehow rebranding it to be the merit council and then the board of directors?
I don't know, I answered anything. Board, council,
Okay.
whatever.
Well, you know, the goal is to make it better for the future without confuse us in the past. So.
I think it would help to do a rebranding just to clarify for the employees because they don't understand that the merit council is not a direct line to the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
They need to understand that they are on their side.
Okay. One thing that I think that's really clear, and I'm glad to hear. One thing that I think also would be I looked on the website. I was more confused. I read through this. I'm trying to sort it all out. But one thing that's been very helpful is for new people, for civilians, for commissioners, etc. I do think there needs to be for lack of a better term, a one sheet. there needs to be some sort of really basic 1 or 2 page, here is our logo, here is our purpose, here are our council members, this is what we do, this is separate from the administration, like something that's very, very, very basic. I did this just next door this year. We put out literally a one sheet that's like slapped to the side of the dais, and it says, "Welcome to Knox County Commission. Here's what we do. Here's who's sitting where they're sitting. Here's the types of meetings that we hold." It's very sort of 101. So I do think that is lacking, because when I first started this, I was like, okay, give me the basic brochure. Give me the glossy brochure of what you all do. So I do think that's one thing that I will put on the record.
There's a website where that's kind of on there.
Yeah, it was just really confusing because it got into the weeds of all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe because I was trying to process it all at the same time. So, but I'll go back and look at it again. So, okay. So, summarizing that, CODA training, you all are okay with carving out some block of time, and that you all are okay with staffing that in an educational way. You're open to names and one sheets and logos and perhaps a restructure of communications. And that's all for that little one. Okay. Is that everybody in agreement with that? Okay. So the next part of the communication problem was the communication between these two entities. I can't tell you how many discussions I've had where one side has said, well, they didn't tell me that, and the other side said, well, they didn't tell me that. So I don't necessarily want to get into the weeds of who said what and where on specifics, but the question is, what is structurally set up for, how do you communicate now, and what is not working, and why? Taking out the fact that some of it may just be personalities. Not everybody likes each other when they work together, but you still have to work together. So I guess what I'm getting to is like, what is the path of communication? Do you all meet regularly? Is it just sort of throwing information over the wall and hoping for the best? I mean, how do we get into that and talk about communication between the two entities that have to communicate? Who wants to go first? Ms. Oster.
I'll take that one. So I first of all want to say to the officers that are here, thank you for being here. I've told Crystal many a time, sitting on the council, the board, or whatever you want to call me, that I would go out literally to the street and meet you guys if you wanted me to and tell you what we did. And I still mean that, like I would still do that. Because it's really that important to me. We sit on this merit council particularly to protect our officers. That's what we're here for. So the only thing that this committee matters to me is it best for the officers. It's just that clear. All of this other stuff, whether it be personality, whether it be a power, everybody wants to have their own thing, I don't know. This is not my full-time job. It's become my full-time job. And if it's going to be my full-time job, I would rather spend this time on a committee talking about how we're going to better our work environment for our officers. I think we can all agree we sat and talked for 15 minutes on pay, on retention. I don't see the disconnect on being able to get people in to be interviewed. I'm probably on the phone with Ms. Taylor 3 times a week. I'm seeing retention, whether that be pay, whether that be benefits, whether that be education. There are so many levels to it. And if I talk to a couple of officers, you talk about being at the jail. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't want to do it. And that's something as a community and a commission that is going to have to be discussed. It's going to have to be talked about because we're losing officers a mile down the road, and there's no excuse for that whatsoever. So that's the kind of stuff that I want to put my energy and time in, not personality issues, not who does this and who does that. That seems like a waste of energy to me. Now, I will say that I spoke to the sheriff and I believe you were out there with him that night after one of the committee, or one of the commission meetings. And I said, I want me and you and Lisette and Paula to sit down, and this was pre-COVID, I suppose. And I said, let's see if we can hash this out and figure out this recruitment and all of this kind of stuff. I asked for that twice. Never got it. So to me, I feel like that has been a smack in the face to the Merit Council, because I put an olive branch out there and wanted to sit down and hash this out. I don't think it should have ever come to a committee like this. It should have been able to be handled. We're grown adults and needs to be taken care of. Time is being wasted on what can be benefiting our officers in fighting. And that to me is silly. It's middle school and it's not acceptable and it's not professional. And so that's where I'm at a frustration level as a council member, because, and I asked Mr. Taylor, and I don't think she'll have a problem saying this, have these issues been here previously? The issues have not been here previously. So where's the issues coming from? I don't know. I don't know if that's from you. I don't know if that's from the public sector that you came from. I don't know if that is the disconnect with the government and civil work. I don't know. But if we could sit down and discuss it, what I wanted to do months ago, I think this could have been hashed out and everybody could have found a way to get along. You don't have to like everybody, just get along with everybody to get to the process it needs to be, because this is a waste of time. So that's been my issue, that I've just felt like they really have kind of snubbed their nose at the council when we've said, let's sit down, let's talk about it, let's hash this out, let's have it. And now we're sitting here months later over the same issues. And so that's where my frustration, I think that's where my other council member, Mr. Wright, Mr. Jennings' frustration is laying. And I hope that we can get it hashed out, but it's definitely not, this is not benefiting these officers that are out on the streets or in the jail. This is not benefiting them. It's silly, and it doesn't need to be, this time doesn't need to be spent like this. But they've got enough to deal with. We need to be figuring out a way to make their lives easier in the environment that they work in. And that's just how I feel about it.
Okay. I have heard you, but I also say we are where we are. And
We are where we are.
and
but I
that's the
think it
goal
needs-
of this committee,
I
is
think it
to,
needs to be said
move
that
forward.
this Merit Council reached out and tried to
Okay.
have the olive branch. And so I want that to be pretty clear
Okay.
on that situation.
I'm gonna start over here. And I will reiterate, we are where we are. The goal is not always to rehash how we got here, but to figure out how to move forward. So, Ms. Avila.
Since the sheriff is not here to speak for himself, if we go back to pre-COVID, that would have been February. I don't know what conversation you had with him. I don't know what. We don't know what.
We were standing outside the county commission after that meeting.
In February, I have no idea. That never made it to me.
It's fine. The goal is not to go back, like, to,
I understand, but I
sides.
feel like I'm being attacked all
okay,
the time.
well, it's okay for people to vent. It's okay.
I just need to defend myself.
Okay, I understand.
I'm happy to talk anytime. We've been happy to talk any day. To me, I think everything came to a halt on the May 27th meeting, where we were trying to figure out this whole thing about, without going into too much detail, into who was going to do the psychologicals and physicals and all of that at that meeting. And I kept objecting that we didn't know about those changes that they wanted to make. I kept asking to please put it on hold, and I got ignored, and everything just went on.
This was the
That we-
ordinance change that started in May that
Yes.
went through the summer.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Where did, I don't want to go back into the ordinance itself, but did the initiation for the changes come from the council members or from the staff?
There were no changes. All we were doing is wording the ordinance to how we were already doing the
Were the
process.
wording changes, but
It was recommended to me by the law director's office to be able to continue doing that, to save the money up front instead of putting every single applicant through
Yeah.
the physical and psychological to make the eligibility list. So the law director said to do it that way, you're gonna have to change the ordinance.
But it sounds like that, it sounds like that process was started, but not necessarily sat down with the administration
Correct.
before it actually sort of hit commission.
Correct.
Right, but
Okay.
it was not a change.
No,
It was,
but I
it
mean,
was
but-
clarifying the ordinance so that they were
Yeah,
following the rule
yeah.
of the law, because that's what they were doing. They were not following the rule of the law. They were going to change the ordinance to follow the rule of the law. Then they were going to revisit changing the ordinance to do what everybody could do to make the process simpler.
But yes, sir.
So,
And I really don't want to get into that ordinance.
to remove the words and the designee of the sheriff. That was being removed. Then when it all.
No, I don't want to get into the ordinance.
I know, but the problem for the sheriff's office was when it came to a head in front of the county commission looked at the sheriff's office and said, why are you just now bringing this to, why is this just now happening? Which wasn't the case at all. It happened in this meeting. And the fact that the sheriff's office objected to it is nowhere, because I know I'm a good committee member and I did what I should have done, not as much as Crystal does, but I got in here. It's nowhere in the minutes that the sheriff's office objected to it. This is a copy of the minutes. It's not in here at all. And I sat in the back of the room. I was there for totally different reasons. Had no idea that I was going to get into this.
But it
I
sounds
was there trying to get my people.
No, I understand. But it does sound like, regardless of what the change was, the wording got cleaned up or clarified or whatever because of conversations between the law department and the council.
What was in the Merit Council manual stated that
Right.
a representative of the sheriff's office as well as a representative from our office determined eligibility. Back in the past.
Yeah.
years ago, that used to be
I don't want to
done.
get into it.
That's
No.
how we used to do the process.
I understand, but
We're just clarifying that to match the law.
words got changed, which meant an ordinance had to happen.
No.
Alteration.
A document got altered to codify or whatever the case might be. It sounds like that went through the process to get to commission without being sort of sat down first with the administration and saying, the law department said, this is how we should clean up the language or make the language correct. And everybody's on the same page, so when we go to commission, it's not a, hey, we didn't see this before.
But the ordinance is totally separate as opposed to what Gabe is talking about. What Gabe is talking about was a Merit Council policies and procedures rule that stated someone from the sheriff's office along with someone from my office
Okay, I was talking about the ordinance. so-
determined eligibility. I think what he's talking about is how that change just happened.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that change was just to make it in line with the ordinance that was already in place, because Merit Council, Merit Board, Merit System
Yeah.
determines eligibility, not the sheriff's office.
Okay, so go back to the basics.
Yes.
Let me pull way back. You have a process, you have policies and procedures, you have a whole manual, how it all works. If the administration says, hey, we'd like something changed in here, you all would agree that you would go to the council and say, hey, we want this section changed.
Just
And
like
then-
the job description.
Right, just like the job description. And you would agree that if the merit system, if the council said, we want paragraph 27 changed, and it's going to affect how they do their job, that the council probably ought to sit down with the administration
They-
before it goes to commission for changes.
Right, but our rules do not go to commission for changes. The rules are done by the Merit Council. They just have to line up with the ordinance.
They
They
just
do.
have to have our policies and our ordinance lined
Right.
up together as a board.
And
That
when you
manual's been
follow-
changed multiple times since I've been on the board, and it's never been an issue like this.
No, the policy that he's discussing that states that someone from the sheriff's office is taken away out of determines eligibility that's just how the ordinance is. The ordinance doesn't state that they determine eligibility at all. So we were just cleaning that up to,
Which is, again, I'm not arguing the cleanup. I'm sort of getting to the point of when something is triggered to clean something up and both sides don't know about it and it goes before commission, there's going to be a natural tension when one side says, wait a second, you didn't even talk to us about this before it's gonna go for a vote before 11
It did
people.
not go for a vote. That manual revision has nothing to do with county commission voting on it. We've changed it multiple times that I've been on the board.
Okay, so when it's changed, okay, that's a great point. When it's changed, say the council, the board of directors, the council says, these are policies we want changed about how things are going. Is there no consultation with the team that's the administration of those officers?
It's the merit council rules. No, I mean, if they're bringing changes, they have to bring policies and procedures as far that they want to change to be approved by the council, because this is
But
all
if the
about the
right,
employees.
if they want things
It's not-
changed, they have to come to you all.
They do, because it's about the employees and it's
Right,
to be
but if
set
you all
forth
change
straight
something,
out.
do you have to notify them?
Not necessarily, because we're not changing anything except for the rules of the merit council that follow the county ordinance.
But from a basic communication standpoint, would you agree that everybody has to be knowledgeable and on the same page to work together in a way? So if they have to bring everything to you all for you all to approve, then you're in the know. If you all make changes and don't talk to them,
They were in the meeting.
Yeah. But it was discussed at the meeting, but because it was not agreed upon as a change, then that's why there's an issue.
I see.
And there
Okay,
was
so
no
what?
reason for
okay.
it. It was very simple.
Okay, I'm just trying to get to the nuts and bolts of
Yeah,
like,
they were at the meeting.
are
It was
both sides telling each other what's going on?
I think there were two,
Just sort of cut to the
Yeah. I'm
Sure.
trying.
I agree that we're open to meetings as often as the merit system would like to do it. If you want to meet tomorrow, you want to meet next week, you want to meet twice a month, whatever the case is, we're entirely open to that. And at any point in time, you can call us. We'd be very happy to sit down and go over everything. In fact, I would love for us to get together so that we can go over, especially, Paula is very good about sending us the eligibility list, but maybe sit down and talk about some of the particulars of the human resources areas and things that we're needing. Like right now, we have a great deficit of females. Paula's helping us out to get a lot of individuals in, females, because we're really having a hard time keeping, retaining female employees. But we're very open to having meetings. I mean,
Well, we are where we are here, and we have 4 meetings set for it, so we're going to do our best to accomplish as much as possible. But would it be fair to say that both sides, if you were to set a regular quarterly meeting that is just the two entities coming together to talk about potential changes or upgrades or things that like, would everybody be open to just setting a regular, every quarter, two people are going to come together and say, look, here's things that we're struggling with, here's things that we're struggling with, and you do it on a regular basis that then may lead to actual substantive changes, but that puts some more regularity in the communications?
I would suggest probably much more frequent than.
Is that a monthly or every other month kind of thing? What is, how
At least
frequent?
monthly.
Okay, so monthly. Because a lot of times you can, it's just sort of like the pregame.
Mhm.
Hey, we're struggling with this, we don't understand this, let's work it out. If we can't work it out, then we bring it to the board and then we hash it out in a more official sense. Is that?
And just one more thing very quickly about that. I do put out an agenda for those meetings. So what was on the agenda was a policies and procedures change, which Mitzi, who is Chief Rugal's secretary, did contact me prior to that meeting, and I supplied her with what the change was. So they do know ahead of time.
So that
Anybody's
information.
welcome to contact me
Sure.
to see what the agenda items actually are.
Okay, so for every, and this is getting a little into governance, which I think is going to come at a different time, but like meetings are regularly noticed, the minutes, the agenda goes out just like we've done, it has minutes, goes through the same sort of governance process, those minutes are adopted, approved by everybody, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that one with a note that says an improvement in communication could be a monthly administrative connection meeting where everyone gets together. Mr. Brooke.
Just want to reiterate the importance of doing that. I don't know anything about the conversation you guys have or don't have. I can see the tension associated with it. But to Ms. Oster's point, the people that this affects are those guys and gals that are in corrections or out on the street who are going to decide whether to make a call on something and how they're going to react to a situation based on whether they believe you've got their back. And if these folks are fussing and they're not communicating, you don't have my back. And I'm not going to take that step into another place because I'm not sure you're going to protect me. And they need to know that. And then, so let me encourage you as a citizen representative, as a former law enforcement officer myself, man, you've got to do this. This is important because they're depending on you. They're not going to be able to do their job. They're going to refuse to do their job. And I say, I would refuse. I won't do this unless I know I've got good backup. I'm not going to step into this situation. It goes for people, the officers that are literally on the streets that are going to back me up, and it goes to knowing that the administration's got me and they're not going to turn me for this. But I can trust you to be people to do what you say you're going to do, and in actual set those grievances aside if we have to. And then with the minutes, please make those available to anybody that wants to look at them.
They're on our website.
Great, and let those officers and corrections officers and sheriff's deputies know that they're out there, and the results of these meetings can be looked upon. And so, all that, I'm sorry for interjecting that, but it's a heartfelt moment of the importance of them.
It's very
having this
important.
conversation.
It's why we're here. I mean, we're trying to figure out a way forward. Ms. Gibson.
I just think it's important not only to discuss communication, miscommunication, misinformation. You've got a room where somebody, like, maybe I don't understand it correctly, but just as you were confused with the title, and we talked about rebranding, you're confused about that, whether they're confused about the policy revisions or whether she's confused. Who cares? Let's just figure it out. Because you got a room full of officers that are looking at this thinking, wow, over miscommunication over something. You know how much they care about the hiring process? None. Because we're too busy fussing and fighting, and they might be needing something. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that. It's the whole purpose of this committee is to try to do this and get it out. Some of this is just going to be venting, and that's okay with me. I want to get to a couple of just specifics. Are there other specific things? Let me ask you this: are the meeting minutes are available? Are the meetings themselves recorded? Are they on CTV? Are they part of a public record? Are these are open meetings, correct?
Yes, they're open meetings. They are recorded. Just they're available to Open Records Act.
But is there a reason, and maybe this is a question for our law department, is there a reason they're not recorded just like a regular public county commission meeting or anything else? Is there a reason it can't be?
No.
Because again, transparency is often trust. If you can build transparency, you can build trust. If people don't think there's something going on behind the scenes, then it's very clear as to the arguments before or after, whatever.
I would think the grievance portion would not. I mean, how is that going to be dealt with? You can't deal with that publicly. So,
Mr. Sir, I've got a spot open. Would you like to come join us? Because I'm going to ask some law questions here. So the question is, could all proceedings of the board of directors for the mayor council be, since they are public meetings, could they be televised just like everything else and recorded in a way that everyone could be transparent about it?
The Merit System Council meetings are subject to open meetings laws, and they are open meetings. What they do now is, Paula has a recording, but they're not broadcast, but I believe they can be, yes, sir.
And what about the grievance portions?
I don't know that the grievances would be. I don't know the answer to that, other than because there's internal information, there's private information, there's things that aren't necessarily public information. But I'll get you an answer next week, but I'm not sure that the grievance hearings would be subject to public.
Mr.
Chairman, just to add to that, I believe that they also address OJI instances, and so you may have a HIPAA problem.
Say that again.
They also discuss OJI adjudication in some fashion, and so you may have a
OJI, I
issue
just
or
want to
privacy
clarify what
issue.
OJI.
Yeah, on the job injuries.
Okay.
Yes, they also discuss.
You guys are acronym people. I just want to make sure we
yeah, you don't want, there could be a HIPAA, there could be another it's the same thing as a grievance. There's certain parts of it that probably don't need to be.
Okay, it would be great to have some clarification around that. I do think that that would be important. Other specific things about communications between the human. Ms. Gibson, you had a suggestion about an employee representative assigned to the HR division.
I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be constructed like that, but you have an entity that doesn't work for her and doesn't work for her and can work as an independent, non-biased employee assigned maybe in there, I don't know where, but then if that can, like an employee representative, like I used to be to the employees to them, just to transmit the information in a very I don't know, lackadaisical.
It's interesting. So we talked about the monthly meetings between the two entities, even if it's just Paula and Ms. and Lizette getting together once a month, or it could be whoever. Is there a reason that the employee representative could not also be part of that meeting? So that you have the force and the administration and the mayor council once a month getting together and saying we're all on the same page. Is there any reason that couldn't? Okay, so I see something there that.
I do see one reason with that, or one reason why that wouldn't work. So you can't take a patrolman just to meet during the day, just whenever. It would depend on the job assignment. And that's why I said to maybe have somebody assigned. It would all, whoever the employee representative is or who you choose to do that role, it would depend on what their primary function is.
So right now you have an employee representative that is elected by the employees.
We have 3.
You have 3. So one of those 3 should be able to meet.
Well, one of them is specifically for law enforcement, one of them is specifically for civilians, and one is specifically for corrections. So like a law enforcement representative doesn't understand the ins and outs of corrections.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting, but there's no objection to having somebody that is representing the law enforcement, or the workforce in that meeting. We just have to figure out who that might be. Okay. All right. Okay. Other specific communication improvements that can be made between the two entities. Right now we have monthly meetings. We have who's at the table. We have some potential transparency in the proceedings. What are some other?
I would suggest, we have a lawyer that works for us full-time, several of them actually. They don't really have representation if he's not available. But is there any way, like if the two entities come together, that they could have some kind of outside entity that would come and mediate, just to make sure that everybody is on their side?
Would that be the law department?
Is he on, but here's let's have the law director debate. Is he representing them when he has to turn around and represent us as well?
That's a great question.
The law director has 11 or 12 lawyers. The way the charter's set up, the law director is the lawyer for the county. And I'm a lawyer that's been assigned to the Merit System Council. And I do some sheriff's stuff, litigation at the same time, but the conflicts of laws, rules are different for government lawyers. We can build Chinese walls between lawyers in our office. So I don't know that I've ever not been available when you needed me.
No.
But you could represent them too.
Not in.
And
not these
you don't
issues.
represent, you offer legal advice, so
Right.
as far as representation.
Yeah,
is-
but I mean, I litigate. I represent the sheriff in litigation all the time.
You know what would work out better would be no lawyers and have somebody like Mr. Broyles.
Not feeling the love.
Sorry, lawyers.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, legal or let's say mediator, legal or mediator. Okay, so that's an idea as well. What other specifics? I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we're going to kind of, again, we're going to bite this off as much as we can. What are other specific things that either side could do to improve communications?
When you asked earlier how we communicate, that's mainly by email. So to have more of an open communication line with probably the meetings or whatever.
Now you sort of submit a monthly report to commission.
I do, yes.
So if there's going to be regular monthly meetings, say starting at the beginning of the year,
Right.
then that could be shared amongst yourselves before, you know, and that's also it's fairly sparse in information. It sort of has like two columns. Here's how many people we put in, and here's how many
Right.
survived the process or whatever.
Unless there's minutes of a meeting that
Right.
previously there.
So I guess one of the questions I would say, and I'd love to ask this of Commissioner Durrett and maybe Commissioner Beeler, what other, if we were going to get a monthly, I mean, ultimately, look, we know legally all this rolls up under commission in some way, shape, or form. If we were going to get information, what would we want to know that perhaps there's something you can provide to the report and you can provide, you know, if you come together once a month and you kind of walk away with, here's our struggles, I don't, you know, what would you want to hear? What would you want to see on that?
Recruiting events, maybe current openings that are maybe not from transitional or promotions.
So recruiting efforts, openings, you know, position or applicants,
Number of applicants.
maybe ones that are
What-
maybe in process.
In the various stages of the process.
Okay. Are there other things that you would want to add to that report, or you'd like to see? What would you like to know from them every month?
Well, we do get a weekly, most of the time, report on the vacancies, because that's how we keep up with the number of vacancies. So usually, I mean, I can give you the current, what I receive vacancies at that time when I do the report each month, what I have received for that week.
Is there anything you'd like to see on a monthly report that from them that you're not? Is there any information that you're like wish you knew? What are they doing over there?
Maybe something for the county commission to just keep them abreast of it, and I don't know, maybe Paul already puts that in there, is just the number of applicants or the number of individuals that are coming into the application process. It will let you know how we're doing in regards to individuals being recruited into the agency. And something that we're gathering data on right now that we're not going to have a whole lot of historical data to support what we're learning in this year, but looking at the number of individuals and why they're leaving, and it lets you know at the county commission level how many people are leaving because of our salaries.
So trends, something that I used to put in a monthly nonprofit report where it was a financial analysis, but it sort of had a section that were kind of, here's some bullet point trends that we're seeing.
Right.
Again, if you came together and you said, hey, here's what we're seeing, and you're like, yeah, I'm seeing this too, then that's something that you can inform us of.
Definitely trends on why applicants or even workforce members are leaving, but also maybe just not specifics, but number of grievances that you received.
Is that interesting?
Mr. Chairman, I think that all of those things are critically important, but what you might also try to establish at some point is a percentage of turnover that you find to be acceptable based on what you've learned from other agencies. So if you could do a comparison of why people are leaving and the number of them that are leaving, and you'd also like to know how many wash out of training, how many are. So I think it's more than just the exit interviews are really key to this. If they'll be honest with you, to the extent that they will, we know it's family, we know it's money, and that's more than half of them. You don't have to go much further, but what we can establish is, what does this look like compared to another sheriff's department of similar size in this region? And then can we set a benchmark for an acceptable turnover rate and address why the turnover is taking place? If it is family and if it is money, what can we do to train them better, and what can we do to increase their pay? Might be the two things that come out of that.
Or work-life balance, you know.
But however you might like to refer to it, because these guys, to your point, are having to work a good deal of overtime just to make the ends meet. I totally get all of that. But what we want to establish is some metrics that commission can look at and say, geez, we're above 16%, whatever the number is. And I don't pretend to be able to guess what it might be in comparison to others.
No, but you can set thresholds. I mean, it's
If
very
we'd like to
common
know
to
when it's
say,
above that, what we're going to do to address it, what our options are.
yeah.
But knowing why they left would be important, and we know that better than half of them are leaving for two reasons. This work is not good for me and my family, and then the pay
Well, back to our very first, we started off the night essentially coming to an agreement that if you're doing the why are you leaving, if you're doing the recruiting on the front end and filling the bucket, and you're doing the exit interview, you should have an annual opportunity to compile all that data and say, here's the state of the union of the workforce. And every January, every February, you come out and you say to commission, before budget time, I mean, February would be a perfect time to come and say, look, last year, this is how many people came in, this is how many people left, here's why, here's the top 3 reasons. As you put your budget together, mayor and commission, please know that this is what our challenges are.
We also, it would be beneficial, I'm sorry I say we, it would be beneficial for commission to know among those who don't make it through training, either on the correction side or the law enforcement side, how many didn't make it? Because there's significant financial investment made in these people to make it. And then we need to know what we can change about recruiting or what we can change about training to make sure that they have the best opportunity to be successful in that. That same percentage could be compared to other agencies of similar size in the region to say what's your washout rate. Because there's significant investment being made both in recruiting and in training. It's now gone. That's proof in the wind that we're going to have to figure out. So
Okay.
those things are important so that you can establish as a commission benchmarks that you can at least be informed about.
Other specific ways that both sides can communicate better. Okay. Last thing I want to do before we wrap this committee meeting is to talk about what are the 2 things that we would like to tackle at the next meeting, which is on December 1st. Several weeks. We purposely put these about 2 to 3 weeks at a time to give everybody breathing room, but also to give time to really prepare for it. I have one that is kind of the next step of the next big step, which is these are the you were sent these electronically, and I could give those out to you tonight. But essentially, this is the organizational chart for the sheriff's office. This is the employment process, and it identifies who does what and what responsibility, and the timeline. And I do know, based on early conversations, that probably 75 to 85% of this everyone agrees on. There's a solid 15% that is of disagreement. So I think this is a crucial thing to dig into as to why. So I'd like to have this at the top of our list, because so much of this is going to affect everything else. So this is a big one I'd like to put. But what else? What's the next thing that you want to tackle in this committee? We are making progress. So what is it?
Before we're done at some point, and this is coming at it from just a pure civilian perspective, you've got the classified service, and I understand that there's the jailers, there's the civilian personnel and law enforcement, and all of those. And I sort of understand, don't really understand the whole, the civilian position component that was brought in at some point. I'm not here to discuss whether that's good or bad. It is. It is what it is, as you've said rightly. But I want to make sure from a taxpayer, from a civilian standpoint, that I understand all that I know about their participation and the way that they're discussed within the Merit Council. Meaning, for instance, I'll give you one example, and then I'll step away from it. All classified employees, to include civilian positions because they're under the classified grouping, must possess and maintain certain psychological, physical, and legal standards to retain employment. Are you doing psychologicals on all of the civilian personnel? And they have to maintain that with TBI fingerprints on and all that kind of good stuff. I just want to make sure that.
And are you talking about
it almost sounds like
civilian, as in like
civilian,
like a
employees.
bookkeeper?
I don't know every person that fits in the civilian position of the classified service.
So you're talking about a real understanding of this committee of who's classified, who's unclassified,
I
and
get
that
that law enforcement's in the classified service. I
What
get
page are you on?
I'm on 6.5. I was just, as I read through that, and I think about civilian personnel, logically, why in the world would civilian personnel be required to do a psychological and maintain that psychological? And it, you understand the hiring process and why that's important for corrections officers and deputies, but I don't get that. And so if they're getting it, I don't know, is that a good or bad thing? But
So the topic would be, what is a classified, what is unclassified, and how do, what are the requirements?
If I might say it differently, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for not being articulate. I see this as a well-written document. It needed discussion in some areas for law enforcement and for corrections. It seems that civilian personnel are an afterthought attached to it, as I read it. That maybe maybe they were always there. It just looks different. It looks funny to me as a civilian, having never been involved in any of this part of it.
Okay.
There may be a reason for that. Maybe an easy answer.
That's a good way to describe it. Other topics that this committee can tackle. We can't tackle everything, but what are other topics?
I think you're gonna have a very biased, report if you take into consideration just oral exit assessments. I think if you could come up with some kind of process, or there's a gazillion different sites where you can create a anonymous exit survey and only give someone access to it when they do exit by whatever means that you could create that through. But for fear of retribution, if somebody wanted to come back in the future, they are not going to be forthcoming with exactly why they leave.
Okay, so that could be part of the recommendations list of
Correct.
when you do exit interviews, set up a system in which they could do that anonymously.
Correct.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Chairman, may I
that's-
ask the question of since we have our
yes,
attorney here, question. Can someone be compelled to complete an exit interview if it were anonymous as part of their employment agreement?
Unless it's agreed to up front, I don't think so.
Okay. Just trying to guarantee
No.
you get some sort of
No.
feedback. So unless they agreed to it as part of the hiring, you couldn't compel them at the end to do it.
I know of no legal basis to compel somebody to answer your questions if they're quitting.
however, you could through communications, I would say anybody that is exiting, especially if they're exiting for reasons that they don't like, would be, if you presented it as this is a way for you to improve the system in an anonymous way.
To Lieutenant Gibson's point, an anonymous way,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes, sir.
Sir, there's really a two-pronged approach. Ms. Aviles is sitting down and doing a one-on-one interview with the individual, but they also have another opportunity to fill out an exit form that does not require their name on it.
But they do have to interact with somebody who knows who turns that in.
Okay, well, now, that, she's not the
Yeah.
one receiving the exit form.
But what's really interesting though is, I'm not sure even our officers, much less our council, has a full understanding of what, I certainly don't in commission, have a full understanding of what it is that you're doing in the processes of HR. And so I might put in the suggestions of, part of the communications is at some point, if you're responsible for both recruiting in and out and the exit on the way out, of like basically telling everybody what's your plan, what's your HR plan, what's your process, how are you going to do that, so that they know, hey, there is some information, because maybe the council will go, we'd love to see those, because maybe we can do something differently. So I'm not sure everybody understands what you're doing, and not that you have it today, but that's part of good communication.
So
Yes.
right now we have, and we weren't doing this before, the exit interview. So before, when you came in and you turned in your property, you were given a form and it was optional because
Yeah.
we can't make anybody fill out anything.
Sure.
So what we're doing now is they have the form, they can fill it out, they sit with me, and some want to talk, some don't want to talk. I don't pressure them, but it's amazing all the information they do want to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting that anywhere, I hear them, and then I make some notes, and that's it. It doesn't go under personnel file, it doesn't go in RMS, it doesn't go, but they are quite forthcoming, and we've learned quite a bit. in
If
the
it
last
doesn't
few
go
months.
anywhere, what's the purpose of it?
It doesn't go anywhere in their personal file, or retribution-wise,
But-
but depending what the information is, and I asked them.
But if there
before-
is a matrix, I mean, if you can measure it in a
Yeah.
way that everybody gets the same thing,
Yeah.
they can put as much information, then you can over time see, are you
Right.
seeing a pattern in a way? But I do think in HR, the more you can take out the one-on-one connection point of letting people vent in a way, or, talk in a way that they don't fear anything.
Yeah.
It's,
And
I think that gets into the weeds a little bit, but
Yeah,
it's
and
a good
it's
point.
worked. And that's how we have the numbers that we have.
Yeah, it is a good point. Okay, so we have enough, last question I'll have is, would everybody, you've been sent this electronically, but would everybody like to walk away with these documents with full understanding that you're gonna bring your own back, so I don't have to make 12 more copies? Or would you like me to just hold on to it till next time?
Hold on to them.
Okay, if you'd like to take one and review it, because this is what we're gonna check next meeting, one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna walk through this and say, do we agree, do we disagree, and why or why not, and then we can find our log jams or our pinch points together. So if you'd like to take yours now, you were also sent this electronically. If not, and so we have a few weeks to work on that. Once again, we will work on the minutes, we'll send those out, work on an agenda, and yes, Ms. Gibson.
I just want to, what is the difference between the one that is titled Knox County Sheriff's Office Employment Process, and then there's one, the Employment Process Timeline? Are these both from the Sheriff's Office?
These three charts are provided by the Sheriff's Office. I provided them also to Ms. Taylor before, but this is the organizational chart of who's in what spot. This is the process of who is responsible for what. So it's yellow is merit council, and blue is the administration. And then this is the timeline for this. So each step here is outlined on this timeline, and the timeline says it takes this many days or weeks to get through step A to B.
And both entities were involved in the creation of the
No,
document?
all three of these have come from the administration and have been provided, but this was not done jointly, so that's why we're going to review it together.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of this gets to some of the frustration of onboarding, timing, who does what, and we've already found that there's a willingness for both sides to say, perhaps we can do it better, you take this, I'll take that, so that's what we're going to do next. So, okay. I want to thank you again for all of your time. I will officially, I guess I need a motion to adjourn. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Okay. Second and a motion. Thank you very much. And we will see you on the 10th on the 1st. Thank you all for those who are in attendance. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'm always available. So thank you for your time and service.
Thank you.